And it's another Monday night here at the Voice of College Football, USC. And wow, we're getting down to the nitty gritty. We all believed it to be a foregone conclusion, but it's become official. We have a starting quarterback for the USC Trojans. And here we are for Trojan Conquest Live. Once again, number 114, Matt Zemek on one side, Tim Prangley on the other. You can catch both of them here twice a week and daily at Trojans Wire. Guys, how we doing tonight?
2 weeks away, baby. 2 weeks away.
Yeah,
Gotta love it. And of course, there will be regular season college football this Saturday. It's that time of year. Thank goodness.
And I was talking, it was long ago, we were talking about, it's only 8 months away. It's only 8 weeks away. Now it's like, less than 8 days away till you actually start playing. Well, less than that, 5 days away to the first game? So
gearing up for Florida State and Georgia Tech and others. And then, of course, USC will be the last to hit the field, along with LSU on
September 1st.
Night. September 1st. Yeah, Sunday night. Won't be the last. There will be a Monday night game, but difficult for me to keep track of all of those games. Okay. Second to last game on Labor Day weekend. All right. We invite your comments and questions, of course, here at the Voice of College Football. We appreciate your contributions as well. We are gearing up for a big blowout this time next week, where we plan to go overtime, meaning 2 hours based on your contributions. So gear up for a big 2-hour show. We are planning on guests. And we're going to take your calls, which these two get the fortune of doing and receiving each and every Friday night. But I'll be able to maybe answer a few questions here and there next Monday. So that should be a good time. So again, next week will be the big build-up to the LSU-USC game the following Monday. So we go for 2 hours based on your contributions here next Monday. All right, let's get to the news of the day. Of course, Miller Moss named the starting quarterback. That, again, as I mentioned off the top, basically we would consider that a foregone conclusion, or do we? Do we consider the amount of time that it took Lincoln Riley to make that decision to be telling, Matt?
I don't think so. I think that there wasn't a single soul who didn't think Miller Moss was going to be the QB1, and that wasn't even a discussion point, right? I mean, I know Tim's been covering the team. He's been covering practices. I don't think that ever came up, did it, Tim? About there was any intrigue whatsoever?
There were some people going a little bit crazy because there were random rumors of reports, but no real tangible consideration that Maiava would be the starting quarterback. We've been saying it since the beginning of spring. He has 3 springs, 2 seasons under his belt. Although it's ironic that Maiava has more starting experience than Miller with only 1 game for Miller, but Miller just has too much experience in Lincoln Riley's system for young Jayden Maiava to overtake him.
Yeah, one thing worth noting, and we're actually going to circle back to this a few times over the course of the show here at the Voice of College Football tonight, but I don't know how many people in the chat watched it. I don't know if you watched it, Mark. I don't know if you watched it, Tim, but, hey, Big Ten Network is now like the USC destination. It's the USC home, and they had a training camp or preseason camp special that aired and then re-aired a few times over the weekend. So there were some interesting nuggets, but part of it was Lincoln Riley being sold on Miller Moss's leadership, the way he's carried himself, the way he's led the team, the way he's looked at in the locker room and on the practice field. So there's it seems solid, the fit for Miller Moss with this team, with this offense. So I really don't think that Lincoln Riley waiting to make this official carries any significant weight. And I would add, as an added detail, the big shocker in QB1 battles over the weekend involved a former USC Trojan, Malachi Nelson. Now that was a shocker. That was a surprise with Maddox Madsen getting the nod at Boise State. So that Miller Moss, being officially named starter, no drama there. The drama is up in Boise, Idaho.
I wondered just how much, has he gotten over the injury he received going into his, there's been a lot of things going around with young Malachi Nelson. I saw him at his best in high school, and that guy could sling it. I begin to wonder, what is going on with him. I'm really hoping it's not mechanics. I hope it's not physical. Shoulder injuries, elbows, things can happen sometimes. And I'm really pulling for him. I'm sure that maybe it starts out he's not the starter. I'm hoping he wins that job and plays well for the Broncos. So, yeah.
Yeah, it could definitely be that he's slow in recuperating and that he might become QB1 like 3-4 weeks into the season, maybe when Boise State begins its conference slate. That's a very distinct possibility. And yes, definitely pulling for the guy because like Lincoln Riley said, he did everything he was supposed to do, but just the injuries set him back. It wasn't that he failed to put forth effort. It wasn't that he failed to be a good teammate. No, he put in the work. He tried, and we're definitely pulling for someone who's, just trying to do the best he can. Obviously, he wanted playing time at Boise State. Didn't know that he would get it with Miller Moss doing what he did. So, yeah, definitely pulling for Malachi Nelson to figure it out and to be healthy at Boise State.
Yeah, that took me by surprise. I guess I had just made the assumption Malachi Nelson leaving the program, and he's going to select a destination where he's going to be the starting quarterback. And especially since it turned out to be a G5, that assumption was made by me months ago. And then I saw the news come out here in the last 24 hours and was taken back a bit. However, it is certainly not the end of the season. So we will see how that quarterback situation progresses at Boise State. They've got a big non-conference game against Oregon in particular this year. All right, folks, comments and questions. We appreciate those. And I guess since we have started at the quarterback position with Miller Moss, maybe we will start our statistical breakdown or our projections there at the quarterback position, if you guys would like. So we had touted this show, everyone, as and you can blame me, as being the show in which we would project season statistics for the individual units on both sides of the ball and some of the key players at those positions. Of course, quarterback, running back, wide receiver, the most foundational of those. So we'll start with Miller Moss. I made a comment a few weeks ago that I'm going to stay with. My predictions actually for the season are coming out this Thursday. So go to the national channel, 6 p.m. Eastern, Thursday night. I will unveil all my predictions on the season, every conference race, championship games across the board to the national championship game. I said here a few weeks ago that it would not surprise me if Miller Moss had arguably the best statistical season of any quarterback in the Big Ten when it's all said and done. I would think that the odds-on favorite to accomplish that would be Dylan Gabriel, with Will Howard not based on ability but based on weaponry around him to be a close second. But I expect Miller Moss is going to have a season that's going to be debatable as a top 2 to 4 quarterback season in the Big Ten. Put me down for 32 touchdown passes, 9 picks, and for him to throw at about 66% completion percentage.
I'm just going to one up you a little around all the way around there. I'm saying he's probably going to throw for about 3,800 yards, probably somewhere around the 68% range, just under 70% range. I'll go with 38 touchdowns and 8 interceptions. Yeah.
Well, Tim being positive, I'm going to be a little bit more negative. That's how we do it here on the USC channel. I have Miller Moss at about 3,200 yards, and so Tim at 38. But I would caution people. I'm saying fewer yards, not necessarily a bad thing if it means USC is running the ball more. And I do think that the Big Ten, being in the Big Ten, that will be a factor in a number of statistical categories for the USC offense. Obviously, we'll do various other offensive stats pretty shortly. But I think the overall cumulative passing yards will be down as USC, when we get into October and November, is going to try to run the ball more, possess the ball more, and you're not going to see quite as much of a freewheeling offense all the time. So I'd say around 3,200 yards. I'm looking at 30 touchdowns and 10 picks for Miller Moss. That's pretty much where I put it. And I would say, that obviously we want this offense to score the way Lincoln Riley knows how. I would say this: give me a 25 touchdown, 6 interception season rather than a 36, 37 touchdown, 12 interception season. I think if Miller Moss, can just minimize turnovers the way Caleb Williams did in 2022, I would take that over an exceptionally high touchdown count, keeping in mind that when USC gets in the red zone, you want to be seeing Woody Marks and Quentin Joyner and Brian Jackson and these other tailbacks, running backs, punch it in. It reminds me of, and Tim, I don't know if you remember this, in that famous epic 2005 USC Fresno State game. Petros Papadakis was the analyst for Fox, and USC was at the 1. And Papadakis, I remember him specifically saying this: USC doesn't just need to score here; USC needs to ram it in. And Papadakis used the term "chest-puffing rooster show." Like, you got to strut around and show that you wear the pants. You're the big dog. You're the alpha. You want to score, but you want to pound it in. You want to make Fresno State, Pat Hill feel it. You want the opponent to feel the weight of your presence, that you can just knock them over. So if Miller Moss throws 25 touchdown passes, but you're seeing USC ram it in from the 1, from the 2, against Penn State, against Wisconsin, and the touchdown count on the offense is spread around such that running backs are really getting more of a piece of the pie, and Miller Moss throws only 6 interceptions, give me that over a 37-12, 40-14 type of season. So that's just my word of caution. My cumulative numbers aren't as high, but I think that's also because there's going to be an effort as the season goes along to spread things around. Now, having just said that, this is my last note here. I think USC will try to be very balanced and very time of possession oriented in the Big Ten, again, to reduce the exposure on the defense, to make sure that defensive lack of depth doesn't become as exposed in late October, early November, on into Notre Dame at the end of the season. But I do think against LSU, I do think Lincoln's going to let it fly. And so if Miller Moss is going to fatten up on the stat line, on the stat sheet, LSU is going to be the catapult for him to do that.
See, here's why you're seeing lots of 35s, 39s, 40s, 40 pluses from a lot of Trojan faithful, because as I've been trying to say for about a minute, Matt, Gabe got to it faster. We have guys 6'5", 6'6". He's talking about Walter Matthew, Lake McCree, Joey Olson, Deuce Robinson, Jacoby Lane. Those, and then that's not even talking about the big guys that play bigger than they are inside. So, I'm telling you, Walker Lyons. I mean, there's gonna be a lot of options for USC at the goal line, and I like the idea of smashing in. You guys gonna see Brian Jackson, the big freshman back from Texas. That kid is a load, and with the interior offensive line that we have, the size. Imagine like an Alani Noah, Monheim moving into center, and then Emmanuel Pregnon is just an absolute freak. He made Feldman's freak list because the guy is just throwing up mad plates, and it's football strength. He's a big guy. And so I remember we used to struggle in recent years to try to get 3rd and 1. Well, I'm not as worried about goal line with those interior linemen. But, play action, any one of those tall guys, a fade to any of those guys. Oh, I forgot. We Kyle Ford. We forgot about Kyle Ford. I mean, there's guys that are just going to, I'm sure UCLA remembers Kyle Ford, the fade. So there's a lot of ways to score at that goal line.
I'm a little disappointed here and taken back that Tim didn't think, okay, Miller Moss, 6 touchdown passes against Louisville in the Holiday Bowl, 6 times 12, 72 touchdown passes. There we go. We're going with 72. I thought that was the simple math there.
Mark. Clever. Yeah,
I've heard enough about 6 touchdown passes.
That defense for Louisville is going to be better than many of the defenses we're going to face this year. So I'll take it. I will take it.
We also have to figure into the equation, how many games is USC going to play?
The more the merrier, but it will be a heavy lift to get to Indianapolis over one of Oregon and Ohio State. That's going to be tough. But I will say this.
I'll wait to see the game in Vegas before I say that's going to be tough. But yeah, it might be tough. But let's wait to see what we see on the field in Las Vegas before we start talking about how tough these teams are.
You don't think that's going to be tough, regardless of what happens in Vegas? Even if USC wins that game 35-10, you're going to tell me that they are going to be in the Big Ten championship game, and it's not going to be difficult.
I'm going to say that I'm not going to put anyone ahead, like on a pedestal, like it's being done already, because we haven't seen one snap of this defense yet. So once I see that, and once I see this offense, then I'll start putting crowns on people. But until the football's actually played, yeah, I'm not going to sit here and say USC's going to be like a lower rung school. We can do that. You guys can go ahead and do that. But
I think about getting to the Big Ten championship game against 2 of the best teams in the country. We're not talking about finishing 9th in the Big Ten.
Well, Mark, you got to remember one thing. We don't play those 2 teams that you're already putting crowns on.
I understand that.
Okay, so getting to that game, you probably won't be that difficult.
I don't think it's going to be difficult to get to the Big Ten championship game.
So then what are we arguing about?
I don't think it's going to be difficult. I think it's going to be difficult for Ohio State to make the Big Ten championship game. I think it's going to be difficult for every team in the league to make the Big Ten championship game. I was merely going with the narrative that it was going to be a breeze to make it to Indianapolis.
Well, so 72 touchdowns, Mark, we should be okay.
Okay. All right. That's what I figured.
Well, before we continue our statistical preview, I would just ask this. Are Oregon and Ohio State heavy favorites to both make the Big Ten championship game? In other words, is it Oregon and Ohio State versus the field, or do either of you see a more mixed, balanced picture? For me, I would take Ohio State and Oregon over the field in the Big Ten, get to Indianapolis.
Well, they play each other, and I think they both play Michigan, right? Am I correct?
Correct.
Okay, and then Ohio State plays Penn State, right?
Yes.
I mean, I don't know. You're looking at the schedule of some of these teams. Again, that's what that factors in here. So when you say it's really tough, I'm taking the whole thing as a whole picture. Not only the teams, not only the rosters. I'm looking at the coaching. I'm looking at the schedules. I'm looking at the starting quarterbacks. Because again, there's a lot to play out here before we start anointing people champions of the Big Ten.
Well, yeah. I wasn't planning on anointing anyone until they actually ended the regular season and we know who's playing in the Big Ten championship game. I will make a prediction, but that will not be any kind of a lock, just like anybody else's prediction is no lock. I would agree with Matt. If somebody sticks a gun to my head and I've got my life on the line, I'm taking Ohio State and Oregon to make the Big Ten championship game. The third team I would select would be Michigan, and the fourth team would be, I'd really have to dissect the schedules of USC and Iowa because I think Iowa's got a real opportunity. The conference took it fairly light on USC and especially Iowa.
When you're looking at, you're making that prediction, what are you basing USC finishing like a fourth, a distant outside that top? What is it holding you back and saying that USC could be one of those teams fighting for the conference championship, Mark?
Well,
what is it about USC's team that has you kind of, reticent to say, oh, USC could be right there in it?
Well, first of all, I seem to be giving them a lot more credit than most people are.
I don't care about idiot. I don't care about idiot national writers. They don't know what they're talking about. I'm asking you because I respect your opinion. So I'm asking you what is it about USC's team that's holding you back from thinking USC could be the thick of the conference race?
A quarterback who's played one game, a thin running back stable, an offensive line that is good as a first team unit, but not necessarily deep, a defensive line that's not tested or proven to be stout, especially in this league. And more so, not what USC is not, but what Ohio State and Oregon are. Ohio State's got the best, probably 1 through 20 or 25 player depth in the nation, and Oregon's not far behind.
Would you say they had that last year as well?
Sure.
Would you say they probably had that the year before?
Yes.
And then the year before?
And they've been going 11-1 all those seasons. So that would get them to a Big Ten championship game.
But they've lost to Michigan every year.
But they would still play the Big Ten championship game.
Nuance. This year we don't have divisions in the Big Ten.
No, I get that. I get into the game.
The divisional format is what basically kept
I fully understand that.
With, of course, Michigan beating them.
Fully understand that. My point is the person with the best roster, which has been Ohio State over the past 3, 4, 5 years, and the best roster of the Pac-12, which has been Oregon over the past 3, 4, 5 years, they haven't won the conference. But go ahead.
I was talking about making a Big Ten championship game, and Ohio State would have a run of a zillion years in a row at making a Big Ten championship game as one of the top 2 seeds in the conference. They would have not made it in 2011 between Jim Tressel and Urban Meyer. That would have been the last season they would have not made a Big Ten championship game.
Here's why I'm not throwing the towel in. I will go back with you guys around and around you want.
I'm not talking about throwing in the towel.
Hang on a minute, Mark. So I'm not gonna throw in the towel. What I'm gonna say to you guys both is one, for years I've heard people say, man, if only Lincoln Riley had a decent defense. If he had the decent defense, yeah, the guy really could coach offense, but what about his defense? You guys are about to see, I don't know how good, but you're going to see a decent defense this year. And so that whole narrative about USC doesn't play defense, they can't do this or that. Oh, they couldn't get a nose tackle in the transfer portal. What are they? Oh no, what are they going to do? I think that the coaching staff's going to answer that for us. So let's see how it goes down on that Sunday in Las Vegas. But I'm telling you guys, say whatever you want. I'm not going to concede that it's going to be Oregon and Ohio State running away, because I've watched too much college football to know the 2 teams with the most talent, according to 247, doesn't always win.
I'm not conceding it either. I'm not understanding the disconnect here, because I'm not conceding anything, but I will be making a prediction. Most likely it's going to be those 2 teams, and I do think that they're the odds-on favorite for a good reason. That doesn't mean that always works out. Of course not.
Pretty much all I said. So I guess we agree, except for the fact that I don't think that they are what you say they are. That's all. So I'm gonna leave it there. We'll see when these teams play. Do you know what's great about this whole thing?
What is not what I said it to be? What did I say?
Hey, Mark, I don't want to spend 20 minutes debating this. So
no, I just want to hear. I will not even debate. Well, I will not even have a response for your take on what I stated. I'm just curious to know
what I'm going to say is, if you put USC like 5th in the Big Ten, based on fourth,
I said they are the 4th most likely team in my eyes to make it to a Big Ten championship game.
So ahead of Penn State, then? Is that what you're saying?
I said ahead of Penn State, and I would have to look at it and really dissect their schedule against Iowa to make a Big Ten championship game.
Well, okay. Well, I'm going to just wait until the first games are played, because I think there's not enough known about USC at this point to even remotely make that kind of a guess. There you go.
Well, that's typically what people do, is predict the season before the season starts. I don't typically jump in on game 4 and say, whoa, what I said didn't know. Oh, I get to mark out and revise my predictions.
That's a great story.
By the way, just regarding week 1, while USC is playing LSU, now, not to put you on the spot, Mark, I'm just clarifying here. You have gone on the record as saying West Virginia is beating Penn State, correct?
Well, I haven't made
Or are you not there yet officially?
No, I'm not there officially. I don't make my predictions until the week of the game. But
fine.
I am leaning heavily to pulling the trigger on that game. Yes.
With the Mountaineer rifle, pulling the trigger.
Yeah, I'm coming close, because do I think and that's going to get completely misinterpreted. Just like I made a comment that was detrimental to West Virginia fans today, and they were going crazy on Twitter because they didn't listen to what I had to say. They didn't read it correctly. People get immediately offended when they think that their team is slighted in some way and they don't listen. So those particular fans were not listening.
We will eagerly wait for your prediction show, which I imagine would be next week.
Thursday night. Thursday
night.
6 p.m. Eastern time. We'll get it in before week 0.
Okay. And you do a show with a betting analyst, right? You want to promote that?
Yes. I would actually like to promote it this way. Let's do this. Boy, a lot of things.
While Mark's pointing that up, just Moose says you have a lot of confidence in Miller Moss. If he throws more than 30 on all the Big Ten defenses, I'll be impressed. Hey, Moose, I mean, it's an interesting and fundamentally good point. I would just point out, Miller Moss might actually get the bulk of his touchdowns in the first 2 games of the season against LSU and Utah State. I would set, in fact, while we're talking about betting, and I know Mark's going to pull up his thing in just a moment here at the Voice of College Football, but if I was setting a number over under Miller Moss touchdowns in the first 2 games, 6.5, 6.5. I think like 3 against LSU and 4 against Utah State looks pretty decent to me. So I'm not saying he's going to throw 30 against the Big Ten, but talking about the season. And I think he might get a large chunk of that first 2 weeks against non-Big Ten opponents. Okay, Mark.
College football is even more exciting with some action on the line. And the games are even better when you're cashing in. And the Voice of College Football is the place to be to get the greatest value. Let's start with my picks. 75% against the money line, 58% against the spread. I've got a 40-year track record. In fact, in 2023, at $100 played per game, you would have netted over $9,300. And guess what? I'm just the warm-up act. Steve Merrill, our ace in the hole, show stopper from Wager Talk. 6 years with the Voice of College Football, over 30 years in the industry. Steve gives us analysis on all the big games, but you can't miss Steve's weekly under-the-radar pick, which went 21-5 against the spread the last 2 seasons. I repeat, 21-5 against the spread. You also get picks from some of our top analysts here at the Voice of College Football, including Steve Dace and Matt Zemek. Become a YouTube channel member or Patreon member for just $99 per month. Go to the main channel on YouTube, click join, and select the betting tier. Do the same thing on Patreon. Make 2024 a winner now. Did you notice I snuck somebody else in there as well? Did you hear another name there? We're going to get Matt's picks in there as well. So, yeah, if you enjoyed that portion of things, folks, then join us on the national channel and subscribe over on the national channel or on Patreon. The StreamYard situation in regards to just trying to roll a video, my goodness, you change all the colors, you change everything, you can't get to anything, but we will get things straightened out here in just a second. Let me lead us before I deal with that. As I take us to the running back position, let me offer something up, because there were in amongst some of these statistical categories some questions I had to bring to light. So I brought my Miller Moss question about the timing of him being named starter, which is probably inconsequential. The running back position, and kind of doing some research there, I'm seeing maybe the position's a little thin on not necessarily depth. There's guys there. They're not injured. But in terms of returning production, guys that have experience, maybe the running back position not being where people would like it to be.
I think this is another area where being in the Big Ten really changes the calculus. You know, if USC was playing in the Pac-12 this year, I probably would be bullish on Woody Marks getting over 1,000 yards rushing. But I'm going to say he's going to check in at around 850, but he's going to get around 350 receiving yards. So he's going to go over 1,000 all-purpose yards. But I don't think he's going to get 1,000 strictly on the ground, because I think being in the Big Ten, physical football, that schedule is going to be a meat grinder as we get into that Penn State, Maryland, Rutgers. You know, Rutgers being a Friday game, there's going to be a need to manage bodies and keep guys fresh. And so I do think there's going to be a modified approach where USC's not going to lean on one bell cow this year the way it did with Travis Dye in 2022 and Marshawn Lloyd in 2023. I do think there's going to be an attempt to spread the wealth around. And I would say this, I would love to see 4 running backs getting at least 250, 300 yards, with Marks getting 700, 800. Like, that would be the best scenario for USC, rather than just Marks getting his 1,000 and the other guys not really making a significant statistical imprint on the season. Tim, your running back predictions.
Yeah, I don't have SC having 1,000-yard back, but the reason why I don't have them having 1,000-yard backs a little bit different than you, Matt, is because I think the Quentin Joyner, he's going to come in, second-year guy out of Texas, 4-star. Guy's got amazing speed. I think that he gets about 650, and then you're looking at about 900 yards. Not going to get to 1,000, but he'll push it during the regular season. I do think. You got to remember, Matt, they're going to open it up. There aren't many teams in the Big Ten that have an offense like Lincoln Riley is going to show the Big Ten. We can sit here and talk about all we want, but Lincoln Riley is not your average offensive coordinator coming into that conference. And so they're going to they might have to drop, 7 guys. They might have to go with a light box in order to handle these wide receivers. And so that's where guys like Woody Marks, and Quentin Joyner, these aren't little individuals, and they're fast. They got great burst, a great step. And I've been talking about this offensive line that's insanely big. So I'm very confident in the running game. The only reason why I wouldn't go higher on this is because I think they're going to split carries. Marshawn Lloyd's going to get the majority, but Quentin Joyner is going to get his fair share to eat. And that's why he probably won't be 1,000. That's the only reason why he won't be 1,000-yard rusher.
Woody Marks is going to get most carries, you mean?
What did I say, Marshawn Lloyd?
Yeah.
Yeah, Woody Marks.
Can't say that I've got much of an opinion on that one. I would think that if you go through Lincoln Riley's resume and look at run-pass ratio, I would think that this team would be somewhere in line with what they've done in the past at Oklahoma, which had extremely strong rushing attacks under Lincoln Riley. In particular, Kennedy Brooks being the last in that line, who had like 1,200 or 1,300 yards, but of course was the main guy as opposed to sharing the load. Yeah, it's going to be fascinating. We've talked about it for 9 months in regards to the transition of these teams from the Pac-12 into the Big Ten, and which way that some of these battles are going to lean. These Big Ten defenses are going to face 2 offenses in particular with USC and Oregon that are going to be as good as any that they had faced in the past. And of course, we're looking at Columbus, Ohio as being the standard in the conference before that. And USC and Oregon are going to face better defenses than they faced.
And like we've talked about for years now, Mark, your conference will play some better offenses as well. Maybe I think there's going to be a situation where the USC is probably going to come, change their game a little bit, but so is the Big Ten with Oregon and with USC. So yeah, it's going to be a mix of both. I think the Big Ten's not going to be the same.
100%. 100%. 100%. 100%. 100%. 100%. 100%. 100%. 100%. 100%. 100%. 100%. 100%. 100%. 100%. 100%. 100%. 100%. 100%. 100%. 100%. 100%. 100%. 100%. 100%. 100%. 100%. 100%. 100%. 100%. 100%. 100%. 100%. 100%. 100%. 100%. 100%. 100%. 100%. 100%. 100%. 100%. 100%. 100%. 100%. 100%. 100%. 100%. 100%. 100%. 100%. 100%. 100%. 100%. 100%. 100%. 100%. 100%. 100%. 100%. 100%. 100%. 100%. 100%. 100%. 100%. 100%. 100%. 100%. 100%. 100%. 100%. 100%. 100%. 1 All right.
I would just circle back and reiterate, since we're talking about running backs, that if USC scores a given number of touchdowns, how they're divided, how the touchdowns are divided between rushing and passing, like in terms of, when we get into these statistical projections, I think the more of a evenly spread out distribution among various players, and it could be, more receivers catching touchdown passes. It can be more running backs scoring touchdowns. I just think the more the distribution, the better the indicator it will likely be for USC, because, in the Big Ten, one of the things on the USC training camp special on Big Ten Network over the weekend, one of the things Danton Lynn said that caught my eye, caught my ear rather. He said, Danton Lynn said, the Big Ten is more like the NFL, with the personnel, with the physicality, with the styles of play, the styles of offenses. So in light of that, what Danton Lynn said about the Big Ten, it's going to be physically challenging. And so the more guys that are stepping up for USC, that gives us more of a chance to have to throw different weapons at different opponents in different situations. It's going to make USC that much more versatile, that much more difficult to defend, and it would point the arrow most likely upward for the Trojans this season.
Yeah, and more NFL players per team than what the Pac-12 had produced. All right, we've got Barry here. Appreciate you being here, Barry. Thank you so much for the contribution. All questions will be answered. SC's offense will rock. Safe bet. Let the games begin. Thank you for that, Barry. Wide receiver, I don't think anyone's concerned there. We've got, I believe, the 4 sophomores who lead the group. And I'm a little bit more interested to hear from you guys concerning the distribution of, so there are really good wide receiver cores, but then there are exquisite wide receiver cores because you've got the guy that can take the top off the defense. You've got the jitterbug in the slot who can just find the speed and space and find the soft spot in the coverage. You got your big physical guy who can high point the defender and box him out. You've got your tight ends who can obviously just be quasi receivers in today's game. So there are talented wide receiver groups out there, but sometimes same body guys that are duplicated. But when they're recruited and developed, the truly best wide receiver cores typically have that variety of guys that can hurt a defense because of those various skill sets in the slot, outside, deep, and short.
Yeah, so in terms of predicting stats for the USC wide receivers, I don't have really precise numbers, but I'm gonna go with leaders in certain categories. So I think that Jacoby Lane, he's gonna lead in yards because I think that in the Holiday Bowl, Jacoby Lane's hands, and that guy has suction cups for hands. So I think Jacoby Lane's going to be the guy who makes that downfield contested catch. And he's going to get a lot of the big downfield home run splash plays for USC. So he's going to be my yards leader. All right. And I think that Mekhi Lemon is going to be the receptions leader. He's going to get the most catches because I think his speed is a difference maker. Not going to compare him to anybody, but I think he's the guy who's going to get open. I think he's going to be the key on, in 3rd and 5, 3rd and 6 situations. I think he's going to be the guy who steps up and emerges most prominently. And then touchdowns, probably would give the edge to Lane, but I think that this is where Deuce Robinson could come in. With his kind of hybrid identity, he'll be able to do things down the field. He'll be able to do things in red zone situations. So he's someone to look for. And I would underscore all of this by saying, Jacoby Lane and Mekhi Lemon, I think in practice, they're the 2 guys who've been getting the most mention. And flying under the radar, Zachariah Branch. And in terms of, people will ask, what will raise the ceiling for this team? Well, first off, it's offensive line play. If the offensive line nails it, this team's ceiling soars. But right after that, if Zachariah Branch can really become a star receiver, he's already a star kick returner, but if he can become a polished route runner and be a star receiver, and like he'll be working off of Lane and Lemon, so like that should help him get open. But like if he can really nail down the details, then USC really takes off. Like then this offense can go to the next level. But we haven't seen it yet with Zachariah Branch as a receiver. But that is a plot point to definitely be watching for while Mekhi Lemon and Jacoby Lane get most of the offseason pub.
I'm gonna stick with what I said on the call-in show. It was about 3 or 4 weeks ago, and that's pretty much exactly that. It's the catches are going to be, you're going to see Mekhi Lemon be that guy that's just going to be just doing all the heavy work. You know, he's to be the guy underneath. He's the guy that's going to be able to take the top off the defense that Mark was talking about. Jay Fair is the guy that's going to be able to take the top off the defense. You know, and people don't really, you talk about Deuce Robinson. Deuce Robinson, when he gets moving, he's going to outrun a lot of guys. We saw that in the Holiday Bowl as well. So yards, like totally, if we're talking about total yards, that's so hard, honestly, because like you just said about if Zachariah Branch can turn into it can improve on his route running, he could absolutely be that guy because he has a chance to take it any time he gets the ball. But it's gonna be Mekhi Lemon. I'm sticking with that. I said that he's gonna lead receptions. Touchdowns is probably gonna be just on the goal line, just the way he can jump and fades. Jacoby Lane's just gonna be a weapon, and that just leaves yards. Man, that could be one of any one of the four, in my opinion. Really, I think though it's probably gonna be either Mekhi Lemon or Jacoby Lane that gets yards.
So take this into consideration. Caleb Williams threw for 3,633 yards in 12 games for him. So they threw, once you throw Miller Moss into the mix, they threw for 4,300 yards between the two of them. So think about that when we make our yardage predictions at the quarterback position, that they went for 4,300 plus and 37 touchdowns between the two of them. So the yardage figures for the wide receivers finished like this. You had Taj Washington at 1,062, Brendan Rice at 791, Deuce Robinson 351, Zachariah Branch 320, Mario Williams 305, Dorian Singer 289, Lake McRee 262, and then running backs after that with Marshawn Lloyd.
Well, in terms of statistical comparisons, this season does not start with San Jose State, Nevada, Stanford, Arizona State, and Colorado.
True. I was just laying out, and of course, Caleb Williams, a Heisman Trophy winner the season before, and maybe a little bit more emphasis on running the football this year. Yeah, and better defensive plays on the other side. Absolutely. All right, good stuff. We go to the defense. I'll get the defensive line conversation started with this. We know Bear Alexander's an excellent player. That can't be debated. But is he going to become a star, like a national player this year? Is he going to become a dominant force consistently? I'm not going to try to elevate him to Ndamukong Suh type, we're talking epic season, but a near first team All-American type of player that could be the difference between, we know he's good, he's the given up front, versus this guy's a wrecking crew kind of guy.
Well, last year it was really just him in the middle, and he was consistently getting solid double teams consistently. Hoping this year they figured out, with Coach Henne to get him some help on the inside. He absolutely has the ability to be that guy and break out. And really, I just wrote something on it recently at Trojans Wire that the coaching staff is pretty much calling him out and saying, and Lincoln Riley literally said, it's one thing to make great plays, but to be a great player, you need to do all the little things and not hurt the team. Like you need to be consistent. There's been a big theme with this team talking about consistency, especially on that defensive line. And I don't think that Bear Alexander was given really the support he needed to shine like he's been able to now. I think, you guys get ready for the name Gavin Meyer. You guys are going to hear that name a lot. Things like that are going to help out Bear immensely. As far as, if Anthony Lucas takes the next big step and is the guy that he was projected to be coming out of high school, and when he came over from Texas A&M as a 5-star, then yeah, I mean, if you give him the support inside, absolutely Bear Alexander can recap. We've seen him, we've seen his talent. There's no denying his size, his strength, his get off, and his quick. I mean, there's not many people are made like that. So yeah, if he's given the supporting cast, he absolutely could have an all Big Ten type of conference. Yeah, he can do it.
I think the salient point to make with Bear Alexander relative to statistical predictions is that on defense, statistics can really lie, right? If Bear Alexander is soaking up double teams, he's soaking up 2 bodies in the middle of that line, he's not going to get stats. But if that helps Anthony Lucas and Gavin Meyer and the other players on that line feast at the banquet table, then that's great. So I'm definitely not going to assign a high number of statistical superlatives to Bear Alexander because I don't think he's going to be a stats heavy guy. And I think that the USC defense can work really well precisely if he doesn't accumulate stats. He's just going to absorb what other offensive lines throw at him, and it'll allow other guys. And really, Tim alluded to this, that Bear Alexander was all alone last year. It was like Tuli Pelotu was all alone 2 years ago in 2022. It's having 4 guys, 5 guys if you want a burger, 4 guys if you want an elite defensive line. And so really that's the key. It's 4 guys all doing their job. So no one cares who gets the sack, who gets the TFL, just as long as they're making the splash plays and they're making the fundamentally sound plays. Bear Alexander might be a statistical 0, but it could mean that he's the MVP of the defense.
I think the goal is not to have him that. I mean, I get you. Your interior defensive tackles, you're not going to be racking up the sacks like other positions usually get. But my point is I think the goal of this defensive staff is not to make him the guy that's just sitting there holding. They want someone else to demand that double team to get Bear. I mean, maybe bring in a running back to chip. That's fine. That's one less guys going out. I'm saying is they want to allow Bear to not consistently be drawing that double and even triple teams sometimes. So, I mean, that's what you want, Matt. You want a guy next to him that's going to demand the respect, like the evolution of, an Anthony Lucas, the emergence of Gavin Meyer coming in. You want to see that happen. A Kobe Pepe that maybe who's been beating reports are he's been beating some guys, and he's been a plug in that spot where you're taking on 2 guys and being that guy just holding a gap, letting Bear get loose. That's what we want to see. So go on, Mark. What do you got to say? Got a little smirk going.
Why, I'm just amused at Roger Dodger's comment here about just if the defensive line lines up correctly, it's going to bring him to tears.
Let me retrace, go back to the Big Ten training camp show on Big Ten Network over the weekend. Danton Lynn and also the analysts Jerry DiNardo and Yogi Roth, they all agree. Anthony Lucas looks the part. DiNardo and Roth particular, they both said Anthony Lucas looks the part from what they observed of USC. So, I mean, if Anthony Lucas has a season that flows in concert with and from the preseason, from the camp that he's having, and that just raises the ceiling, and that plays into what Tim said, that whoever's next to Bear Alexander has to be a stud. Then doors open, literally and figuratively, for that USC defensive line. Get those alleyways, those lanes to the quarterback, and everything changes for the better.
Matt, thank you so much for that, because otherwise I would have missed my notes here. Anthony Lucas, practice player. Meaning, can he emerge as more than a practice player and be the monster that he could possibly turn out to be on game day? All right, linebackers. How did this shake out last year? We had Mason Cobb with 85 tackles, Jalen Smith with 75. There's a question coming in from our buddy Trojan Blade about Jalen Smith. I thought
said that
Jalen's probably going to be he's probably playing cornerback. He won't be a linebacker.
Yeah. Well, no. I was just going through tackles leaders. But yeah, Trojan Blade question. Bruce Feldman said that Jalen Smith has been SC's best corner in camp. With that in mind, who do you see starting in the other secondary spots?
I would say Covington. And then Kamari Ramsey and John Humphrey, I imagine would be strongly considered for starters as well.
Yeah, I think that I think John Humphrey will be, and then you're gonna have a pretty fierce battle between Covington, Nicholson, and Smith. That's too close to call, I think. And then probably free. Yeah, so Kamari Ramsey. And then, same thing, their safety, you're probably looking at, I don't think that Akili Arnold came down just to ride the bench. I think he's going to get some strong play. Anthony Beers shined a little bit. Again, the secondary is going to be interesting as well. They even talked about it. Belk was kind of cagey. He was talking about, who was looking good and who's going to be starting, and he didn't really give a definitive answer. And I'll tell you what, you see a lot of guys flying around out there, and they've been a lot of different combinations. So that's probably gonna be a game time decision.
Greedy Vance, the Florida State transfer, being mentioned there.
I bet you he's etched his way into nickel. They've referred to him as sticky. And anytime your coaches are saying you're sticky and your cover skills, and he coming over from Florida State, he looked hungry, and he's been playing great at practice. So, yeah.
Let's hit the super chat from DML. DML, thanks for the $10 super chat. We really appreciate it here at the Voice of College Football. Should Power 5 allow inter-squad scrimmages like the NFL due to changes in the game? USC could practice against San Jose State so the coaches can see the team against different schemes. Well, DML, I think there's a reason why this doesn't happen. And I go back to the most violent football game I've ever seen. The one football game in which I literally did fear for the safety and physical well-being of the team that was getting thrown around like a rag doll on the field. Mark knows the answer. Mark knows where I'm going with this, because I've mentioned it before here at the Voice of College Football. The Sugar Bowl between Hawaii and Georgia, 2008. Like, I thought those poor kids from Hawaii were going to all get concussed and sent to the infirmary. Like that, I really thought that, kids were their well-being was in danger. I really did think that when I watched that game. Like skulls were just getting pounded. Like I was fearing for the safety of every Hawaii player on that field. So the point being, DML, that when you get a big Cadillac blue blood program going up against a smaller program, you invite disparities in physical overall development, resources, et cetera, et cetera. Now maybe you would do it with two Power 5s, and since Stanford and Cal are now in the ACC, maybe you do a USC Stanford or UCLA Cal scrimmage. Okay, but the point to underscore is that you do have differences in terms of the size, the weight, the heft, the depth, the resources. That's why I think you don't see that in college football.
So what you say makes total sense, Matt, and we want the players to be protected. However, I'm going to put a condition on this, but I'm going to bring up that obviously these games are played all over the country every week between the Power 5s and the Group of 5s. Now, are we thinking that if this is a training camp situation and there are jobs on the line, that these Power 5 players are going to be, out for blood because they're fighting for a position? Is that your thought?
I mean, it's a possibility. Like, that wasn't at the forefront of my mind. I'm just thinking about the differentials between, a top flight program and a lower tier Mountain West program, or power, if you do Power 5 versus mid tier Group of 5. Like, would you want an SEC team and a Sun Belt team in a scrimmage? Yeah, I don't know. Like, it just seems like something where if you're going to do that, you put a Sun Belt team against a Conference USA team. Or does Conference USA even exist? Maybe Sun Belt against MAC. So like, if you're going to do it, I think you'd have to be careful about doing it. And I don't think you could do it Power 5 versus or Power 4 now, right? Power 4 versus Group of 5. I don't think you'd want to go down that road too many times.
Or because of travel situations, you could have conference teams playing each other that do not play each other in the regular season. Just a thought.
That's true. Like, the NFL has preseason games between, it's almost all NFC, AFC teams that are not going to be playing each other during the season. They do that for a reason. Yes. All right, folks. The NIL director of the Friday show here at the Voice of College Football on the USC channel, our greatest supporter. The second hour is the Adam Lamparello hour, because he finances it, makes it possible with his very generous donations. Adam now coming in with $50, and like, I love the fuchsia background. That's new. I don't know how that happened, but it looks very stylish. And Grace, his girlfriend, called in on this past Friday's show, and Grace is a friend of the USC channel here at the Voice of College Football. We're going to do whatever it takes to keep Grace happy. Obviously, Adam doing the same thing. Good choice, Adam, and thank you.
Adam, thank you so much for that. Adam, we're going to get you some gear. We are in the process of making sure that the logos on the shirts are going to be in tip-top upgraded condition. So we're putting some resources behind that, because we want to blow up the logo on the t-shirts, and understand when we expand that the quality of the logo needs to be upgraded to do that. So we're in the process of addressing that.
I want to say one more thing before Mark and Tim continue. For this next Monday's USC LSU preview special here at the Voice of College Football. So if you haven't watched our Friday show, we do a model where we fundraise. If you give this amount of money in the first hour, we do a second hour. If you give this amount of money in the first 2 hours, we do a third hour. So for next Monday, there's not going to be a third hour. But if we raise $200 in the first hour, you're going to get a second hour of USC LSU preview special here at the Voice of College Football. So if you raise enough money in the first hour, you're going to get a second hour next week of our Trojans LSU Week 1 preview special next Monday night. But you're always going to get that first hour free. For the Monday show here, for the Friday call-in show, you always get that free first hour. But we're doing fundraising to support our work here on the USC channel at the Voice of College Football. And Adam, again, he's been our NIL director, and we thank you, Adam.
Which will feature everyone's phone calls as well next Monday. And in addition to that, I am doing my best to bring in some LSU media to balance out the conversation and bring that perspective as well. Absolutely. So we skipped to the secondary. My issue there, I was running down tacklers, and then it made me think of Trojan Blade's comment about Jalen Smith impressing in camp. So we skipped to the secondary. We'll go back to the linebackers. Tim, I know that you've made comments concerning Mason Cobb not necessarily being at his best last year, and that we may see a improved Mason Cobb, or what he was in Oklahoma State in the Big 12.
I just don't think he was placed in a position to be very successful. Matter of fact, I don't think many players on that defense were placed in a position to be very successful. That became evident a long time ago, but really evident, as that season carried on, which led to Alex Grinch being let go. Guy was an all-conference player at Oklahoma State. Had some great plays and shine in the backfield as well. But I think that if you're talking about someone who's probably to lead the team in tackling, that's probably go to Issa Macarinus Arnold. He's probably going to be your guy. He shined up at Oregon State. Trojan fans that don't know about him already, you'll get to know a lot about him this season pretty early on. I can't remember if it was Matt Entz or if it was Danton Lynn, but basically said this is the prototypical linebacker, especially the Mike position.
I think with the USC linebackers, just in terms of who's going to be team leaders this year, I think it's going to be pretty clear cut. Mason Cobb tackles, Eric Gentry pass deflections. I don't know if we differentiate between deflections and pass breakups. Like I think pass breakups might be like at the point of the catch. I think I'm framing deflections as being different. Like you're tipping an in-flight pass before it gets to the receiver. So like Jalen Smith or Greedy Vance might be the leader for pass breakups. But I think Eric Gentry is going to be the leader in deflections, before it gets to a receiver farther down the field. So those are the two statistical leaders for the linebackers.
Which is oddly one of my favorite plays in football. I love to see a big defensive end get his mitts up there and bat a ball in the air. I just enjoy that. Harkening back to Ed Too Tall Jones doing that with the Dallas Cowboys more than anyone in the NFL at the time. All right. Well, as Matt has outlined very well, we are doing our best here leading up to kickoff, of course, to provide you with the best coverage possible. Matt and I have produced 3 choice cut bonus segments, and those have all been released and are here along with 14 others. So a total of 17 selections from Matt and I. So if you become a YouTube channel member on one of the 2 highest tiers, you get the selections from Matt and I, the exclusive content there. And as Matt has outlined, next Monday, 1 hour in the books, and then we hit that $200 mark and we go for the extended hour. Take your calls. And again, we are efforting to get some LSU media here as well to hear their final look at LSU coming out of fall camp.
While Tim's away, and we'll get back to the secondary and a few other statistical predictions before we finish the show here at the Voice of College Football. While Tim's away, just a little bit of news on the LSU front. There's a flu bug. There's a gastrointestinal bug that's going around the LSU locker room. We made note of that earlier on Monday at Trojans Wire. And so, the obvious point is, okay, it's 2 weeks away. So in all likelihood, probably not going to be an issue. Okay. But, guys are trying to develop, they're trying to find consistency. They're trying to find their ideal playing weight. Like they haven't played a game yet. How does this affect their overall physical development, their strength? It's a plot point. I'm just saying that. I'm not saying it's likely to influence the game, but it has now become one of the plot points for this LSU USC game. It's definitely going to be something that I'm going to have in the back of my mind.
Is there anything else from the linebackers or secondary that you guys wanted to hit on in regards to any statistical breakdowns, interceptions, or likewise Mason Cobb, the leading tackler, according to Matt, and
EMA for
Eric
me.
Gentry passes defensed. Yes. And then Tim, you went with Mascarenas Arnold as the leading tackler. Of course, that's what he was at Oregon State.
I think in the secondary, either Jalen Smith or Greedy Vance as the leader in interceptions. And I would say, Kamari Ramsey he won't lead the team in tackles, but I'd say he might lead the secondary in tackles.
Your last comment, Matt, concerning the health of the LSU team and not necessarily trying to make too much out of that, but again, it's more about development and learning the scheme and doing all the things that make these teams sharper and ready for the opening game than it is the health that we're going to see 2 weeks from now. I went to FanDuel to look at the line for the game, just curious to see if maybe there's been a movement at all. So that was a full touchdown a couple months ago at 7 points for LSU, 5.5.
Ooh.
LSU is now just a 5.5 point favorite. I should have scarfed up the 7 when I could.
Yeah, it does seem as though, you know what? It's interesting. Public opinion is moving toward USC in both the LSU and Michigan games, right? A couple months ago, where the Vegas line was, it's moved about 1.5 to 2 points toward USC for each of those games. So that is really interesting.
Now, what's funny about that is that, and I'm not saying this about this specific game at all, so nobody take me out of context here. I'm making a broad generalization, but our buddy Steve Merrill at Wager Talk says that is usually a bad indicator that the public typically doesn't know what they're talking about. He says it more eloquently and has metrics to back it up. But that's usually, you don't want to go with the public.
No, you want to go at the end. When the money moves to the end, that's when you know what you got going.
So, all right, guys.
All right, we have one more thing to do, and that is points scored and points allowed per game. We wanted to hit that on our statistical overview of USC here at the Voice of College Football. So I think most USC fans, most of the people in the chat are going to expect 40 points a game on average. But as I did mention earlier when Mark raised a specific point about cumulative stats from past seasons, last year, San Jose State, Nevada, Stanford, Arizona State, Colorado were the first 5 games. You know, it's easy to get to that 40 point per game average when that is your opening 5. This schedule is going to be difficult, and I don't think USC is going to get to 40. I'm thinking about 34, 35 points a game. But here's the thing. I'm sold on this defensive staff. I think this defense is going to do well, barring the one thing, which is the defensive line gets chewed up by attrition and injuries. If the defensive line stays relatively healthy, and there's tons of depth in the secondary, I think as long as the defensive line doesn't go to the infirmary a lot, I think USC is going to allow under 27 points per game. I think USC allows, I'm going to put it at 25. So USC scoring 34, allowing 25. And, you know, some people might think that I'm really selling this offense short, but I would reiterate against Penn State, you know, against Rutgers on what is a Friday night game. And like Rutgers has some physical guys. Like Rutgers is not a soft team. That's going to be a short week. You know, in the Big Ten, USC will have its moments on offense, but you're going to see, I think, the style of play become more conservative, more ball control on certain occasions. And Lincoln Riley is going to need to call games more geared toward ball control as we get into late October, early November. So I think the total offensive numbers are going to be pulled down, but I also think the defense is going to be right there. It's going to be ready to do a very good job. It'll be interesting because the past few years we've been thinking if the defense can give up fewer than 35, we know the offense is going to hit 40. This year, I don't think it's the same calculus. I think that if USC can average mid-30s and the defense can – I think USC makes the playoff if the defense can get down to 22, 21 points allowed per game. But I think it's going to be at 25, and USC goes 9-3 in accordance with those numbers.
Well, I mean, last year you had, what was it? I looked it up. I'm trying to look for it right now. But you had a situation where you had teams like Maryland giving up 22 points per game. I'm with you on the offense. I don't think we're going to score 40. It's not, you know, that Lincoln Riley always scores 40 or more, but I don't think we're as low as you. Would you say 30? What'd you say, Matt? 31, 32?
34. They're going to score 34. They're going to allow 25.
Yeah, I'm close to yours. I'm thinking we're probably looking more like 37, and then we're in that 22 range, because I don't think we're out of the top 50, because that puts you in the top 50. I don't think we're outside the top 50. I just don't.
I would just say, I'm not going to say you're right or wrong. I'm just going to say, if you give me USC scoring 37 and allowing 22, we're in the playoff.
Because here's why. Here's why. The offenses are not like we saw in the Pac-12. They just are not going to be like that. They're not. And if you have the smash, run the ball, offense, or we keep hearing, that's going to cut down on possessions. So even that means, if you go slow and eat clock, by the way, the new clock rules, that the clock's just going to roll. So there's a big part of that. There's a big reason why most of the big, and not even great killer defenses in the Big Ten are in the top 50 in defense, is because of the offenses you face there. And so that's why my projection with Danton Lynn, the new system, brand new players, guys that were stars all around the country, and considerable upgrades at the coaching staff and positions, and the fact we're playing in the Big Ten against Big Ten offenses, there's no reason why SC can't hold teams under 22 points per game.
Kansas was 17th in the nation in scoring offense last year at 34.8, 17th in the country. So that's still a pretty elevated number. If USC finishes 17th in the nation in scoring offense, they should have a pretty damn good season. I can't really argue with Matt's numbers. I think they're, certainly if they go 37-22, offense and defense, I'm not saying
sign me up.
That could happen. I would certainly take the over on 22. If I was a betting man, I would take the over even on 25, but reluctantly, I think I would go 25 points per game on USC's defense. Looking at their schedule here, I think they're going to be playing a lot of games in the high 20s against these defenses that they're facing. And the offenses that they're facing.
Who's the best quarterback we're going to face next year, you guys?
Best quarterback's going to be the best quarterback's probably Garrett Nussmeier is probably the best quarterback, or Drew Aller. We'll see. Yeah. Riley Leonard. We'll see what Dylan Raiola is once he's played 10 games. In game 10, he's a 5-star. My point is we can talk about the Big Ten defenses all we want, but then we got to talk about the Big Ten offenses as well. We are. We're talking about both.
So the grand scheme of things, the reason why we're not scoring over 40 is because the game's going to be slowed down. What's slowed down? The possessions are slowed down for both teams as well.
Sure.
And so therefore, with the improvements made, holding like us having the same, giving up the same amount of points on average that Maryland had last year, I don't think it's overstriding, guys. I really just don't. I don't think I'm overreaching whatsoever. So
I would make this nuanced point about quality of quarterback that USC is going to face this season. If you just isolate Garrett Nussmeier versus Riley Leonard, give me Riley Leonard. I think Leonard's a better player. However, USC's playing Garrett Nussmeier in week 1, and that LSU offensive line is probably the best offensive line USC is going to face all season. So that puts Nussmeier in a position to succeed. But I think Riley Leonard's a better player. But USC gets Riley Leonard at the very end of the season when that defense, assuming it stays healthy, will have had so much time to come together, understand its roles. So, I think it's better that USC's playing LSU in the first game and Notre Dame in the last than the opposite. If USC was playing Notre Dame in the opener and LSU at the end of the season, that would be much worse than this. So
Notre Dame lost Joe Alt, and they replaced him with a freshman tackle who subsequently got hurt. Now they're going through a backup freshman left tackle. And sure, yeah, he's got the whole season to get ready for him. And then LSU, their tackles are amazing. I hear their guards are pretty good, but they're starting a true, I believe, correct me if I'm wrong, maybe he's redshirt, but I know he's a freshman in his very first game at center. That's also very pivotal. But people, when we talk about the offensive line at LSU, keep kind of overlooking. That is a pivotal position. No, it's not on the road, but it's not a home game either. Allegiant Stadium's a small stadium, so if you have any type of fan base in that stadium, it gets loud. So that's something to remember as well.
Great stuff out of you two as well. As always, appreciate you all being here at the Voice of College Football. And again, it's Friday with Tim and Matt, 7 p.m. Pacific time, right here at the Voice of College Football USC. And then we all get together next Monday for the big LSU special and the preview that goes on, we believe, for 2 hours. And again, bring your questions and your comments. But first and foremost, it's Trojans Wire every day this week. Anything in particular, Matt, that people should be looking out for?
Well, we're now close enough to the season that we have to get going with our preseason rankings, preseason predictions. So if you love all those rankings and predictions, you want to go there. I ranked the coaches of the 10 schools that left the Pac-12. All right, so it's the 10. We're not counting Washington State and Oregon State. It's the 10 schools that left the Pac-12. If the Pac-12 still existed, where would the coaches rank? So you can see where I ranked Kyle Whittingham, Lincoln Riley, and Dan Lanning. So you definitely want to get to that piece at Trojans Wire. But we're going to get into all the rankings. Lots of.
I want to go look at that right now.
Okay, there you go. So you know where to find it. So rankings and predictions, we're into that part of the cycle at Trojans Wire. And folks, it's a business where page views are now the metric by which we get paid, and we need your help. It's been a slow summer, and understandably, I don't blame people for not reading up on USC in July, because you're waiting for the season, you're waiting for LSU. But now that the season's here, we need your readership at Trojans Wire so that I keep my job, because it's no sure thing if SEO and page views don't hit their targets over the course of the season. So the numbers have been low in the off season, but again, understandably, but now we really need your support and your readership at Trojans Wire. Thank you, Mark, for making sure we promote our website here at the Voice of College Football. Thank you.
Anything else, Tim?
I was just looking at this statement right here. So I'm just take a look at the statement. What do you see as the flaw in this statement?
Well, it's just a factual statement. However, of course, both of these teams have different defensive coordinators, for one thing, and largely new defensive staffs. And they both don't have Heisman Trophy winning quarterbacks anymore either.
Yeah, but LSU lost their offensive coordinator, Mike Denbrock, who was an orchestrator of that offense, whereas USC still has the best signal caller in the game. So, yes, all of that is true, but sometimes, what's that?
One of the.
Oh, he is.
I don't think we can say definitively anybody's the best at anything.
No, we can. And looking at that right there is you have to look at the whole picture. It's going to be a hell of a game, but again, when it comes to coaching, it leans towards USC.
All right, very good. That's a debatable point, but I don't know. All right, we all appreciate you being here at the Voice of College Football again Friday night with Tim and Matt, 7 p.m. Pacific time. We will see you then.